This AI-generated promotional video shows a concept of what the data center campus could look like. It would be built south of Grand Prairie in 3 phases. The first phase would be about 10 square kilometers in size and cost $12 billion.
Since Sunday, we've been speaking about AI, Palantir 5G, Internet of Things, the government departments that are using algorithmic surveillance and predictive AI software to spy on us. And tonight, on this 4th episode of this 5-part series, we speak about data center and how AI needs massive data centers and how, unfortunately for us, Canada is, in my opinion, the best place to build them. Welcome to the Political Orphans. My name is Nico Lagan. One thing I want to make very clear from the get-go is that, yes, data centers have existed ever since the internet came to be, but the truth is that AI is reshaping both data centers themselves and energy infrastructures. AI is triggering one of the largest energy and infrastructure boom in human history. And unfortunately for Canada, we're going to see a lot of them built here. So let's start at the beginning. And I got to warn you that I tried to keep this as high level as possible. This is a very, very complicated topic. It is extremely technical too. So I really am trying my best to keep it high level, but very educational, if you will, without going into the weeds, because I'm not here to be a professor, right? I'm not trying to be a university professor here. So I'm really trying to do my best to not only make this educational, but I want it to be informal and somewhat entertaining at the same time. Okay, so let's get started. At their core, data centers are the brain of the internet. Every website, video, pictures, cloud service, all information available online is sitting somewhere on the server. So data centers are nothing new and have been around for decades. But there's massive differences when it comes to the more traditional data centers that we're used to seeing when you compare them to the data centers dedicated to AI. And this show is all about that. And it's very important for Canadians, especially considering that they are coming here to understand what those differences are between the AI dedicated data centers and the more traditional data centers. You can shape them. You can resume those differences into 2 major differences. One being energy consumption, 2, cooling methods, and one could argue, and I'm not even sure it's an argument, but it's not, it's a very valid argument, but the impact on the environment. That should be the number 3. We're not going to talk about this today, but I promise you that the next episode we will, because I did not have a chance. There was no way I could speak data centers without splitting this episode into 2 episodes. So we don't no longer have a 5-part series. We have like an 8-part series. But in this today, we talk data centers. And then the next episode, we're going to be talking about the hypocrisy behind data centers in Canada. So 2 main differences for today's episode: energy consumption and cooling methods. Let's start by energy consumption. So it's estimated that AI dedicated data centers can pull anywhere from 5 to 100 times the energy compared to a traditional data center. And I wanted to show a picture because I don't know how informed people are about this stuff. I come from that world, so to me, this is just very normal, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. This is just a very, very simple question, a very simple picture. This is what I'm talking when I say data centers. This is a very, very small data center. But when I start talking racks, when I start talking energy, especially energy consumed per rack, this is a rack, right? Like one of those structures there. If you look at the LED lighting going from top to bottom, that is one rack. So just want to make sure we're on the same page. So we were talking about consumption. We were talking about energy consumption. So the thing to understand about AI, the big difference between regular data center servers and AI servers, they use the same type of racks. So the racks I just showed, those are standard racks. But without going into too much detail, the big difference is that AI, their servers are a lot smaller. So they're capable of packing a lot more of them within one rack space. We'll keep it at that to make it simpler. So the more computer power is packed into a smaller environment, meaning that you fit more in one rack. So guess what? It consumes more energy. Like I said, anywhere from 5 to 100 times the energy. If you look at a traditional data center, typically draws anywhere from 5 to 15 kilowatts per rack. And it's important to understand how they work. So traditional workloads, meaning traditional servers, the CPU ran servers, handle tasks sequentially and occasionally burst when traffic spikes, but otherwise sits idle. What this means is that those type of servers there only handle traffic when there's traffic to be handled. Often those servers are going to sit there doing nothing, as in they're not handling traffic, they're not handling demand, they sit idle. There will have spikes of demands when people, let's say it's a cloud service, people are accessing files and stuff like that. You're going to see spikes in utilization, thus require more power. But often those servers sit idle, they're not doing anything. Then you have your new type of AI data centers, which compared to the 5 to 15 kilowatts per rack, you can see those racks pulling anywhere from 40 to 100 plus kilowatt per rack. With next generation AI clusters, you're looking at 500 kilowatts or even 1 megawatt per rack. So you're talking about 100 to 200 times the amount of power that a regular rack requires. And this is all because of the density, like I just explained, and the fact that AI servers are based in GPU graphic, so not the same as CPU. Again, I'm not going to go down that road. Just understand that they pack more per rack, thus requiring more energy. You're looking at anywhere from 5 times to 200 times more. To put it into perspective, a single highly dense AI rack can draw enough power to run dozens of average suburban homes simultaneously. And because of their greater energy demand, the overall power capacity required for those new facilities, so those new data centers, have completely shifted the energy landscape. A typical mid-sized to large-sized traditional data center usually operates on a scale of 10 megawatts to 50 megawatts. But like I just told you, a single rack, depending on the type of AI they're running, can run 1 mega rack, only 1 rack. And in data centers, I've seen data centers with thousands of those racks. Like I used to sell rack services like data center space, And we would have some with hundreds, if not thousands of those racks. So if you look at the modern AI training facility, you're looking at 100 to 500 megawatts. And there's new campuses being built right now that they plan to scale to 2 to 5 gigawatts, which 2 gigawatts of AI data center consumes enough electricity to power roughly 1.5 to 2 million homes. And it requires its own dedicated electrical substation or direct ties in to nuclear and natural gas powered plants. And you need to remember that because this is very important, the natural gas powered plants, because we're going to talk about that when it comes to Canada. It's also worth mentioning that data centers normally will have multiple access to power grids, meaning that you're going to have, we had buildings that would have 2 separate power entry, meaning that they would connect to the power grid in 2 different locations in case one of the power grids went down, the other one was still operational. Plus, they would have a large amount of site diesel generators. And on top of that, you would also have massive banks of UPS, massive banks of batteries. So at least 2 entries to 2 different power grids, diesel generators on top of UPS, and applications like AI chatbots like ChatGPT and most AI applications. This, I'm just putting that into perspective so that you understand the type of services we're talking about. But AI bots like ChatGPT and AI applications that needs to answer questions instantaneously, they are run in data centers that offer what we call the gold standard, which is 99.999% of uptime. That represents a possible maximum downtime of 5 minutes per year. So I just want you to understand the type of data centers we're talking about here. We're talking about top-notch data centers. We're not talking about a little data center sitting in somebody's basement here. We're talking about massive infrastructure. So you have the power difference that's anywhere between 5 to 200% more. Then you have something that you need to deal with in every single data center, and it's cooling requirements. Because data centers, servers generate a lot of heat. They use a lot of energy, they generate a lot of heat, and they need to be cooled down so that they do not overheat. So in traditional data centers, you're looking at air cooling. So massive AC and fans is roughly enough to handle the job. Normally, that's all they need. Massive ACs, you pull air, cool it, and that's pretty much it. You filter the air that's warm for the cold one, exactly like you do at home in the summer, just on a very different scale. But AI racks are so concentrated, like I said, the density is so high, and they generate, obviously, if they consume more power, they generate more heat. But instead of being air cooled, they are cooled in liquid, in a type of water that is directly, that the servers are directly sitting in. They call it either direct to chip liquid cooling or immersion cooling, where the server is completely submerged in that type of water that we're talking about. So while liquid cooling is highly efficient, it still runs high pressure pumps and advanced chillers. So you're talking about massive refrigerators sitting outside the data center in order to cool that water down. So these are the 2 main differences between traditional data centers and AI data centers. Of course, there's a lot more differences, but those are the 2 main ones that we're going to focus on, and then the next episode we're going to talk about the environmental impacts that those AI data centers have. So the question becomes, why do I call Canada arguably the best place to build data centers in the world? Well, it all has to do with Alberta. So the demand for AI is skyrocketing and America is out of power. That's where Alberta fits in, with an abundant natural gas and a premier that wants data centers. So the reality is that massive tech companies, like tech giants like the Microsoft, the Google, and Amazons of this world, are hunting for gigabytes or gigawatts of power to fuel their massive AI training clusters. In the US, major data center hubs like Virginia, Ohio, Texas are facing severe grid concerns. Local utility companies simply cannot build new power lines or approve new grid connections fast enough to keep up with the explosion of AI demand. And this is where the big opportunity is for Alberta. It's been reported that Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Microsoft are investing hundreds of billions in AI data centers. Their 2025 expenditure alone was expected to total roughly $370 billion. And that number obviously is anticipated to rise in 2026. And this is where the massive advantage is, or why those companies are looking at Alberta, because it's estimated that Alberta's natural gas is 40 to 50% cheaper than in the US. That's because Alberta produces a massive oversupply of natural gas, but has limited pipeline capacity to export them all out of the province. So basically the natural gas ends up being trapped, if you will, locally, because they can't ship it out of the province. So prices stay incredibly low. Tech companies can buy this local gas dirt cheap to run their on-site turbines. But here is the major differentiator between Alberta and the US, is that Alberta is proposing to bypass the grid fees, meaning that in both Canada and the US, a massive portion of the data center power bills isn't the energy that's being consumed. It's the transmission and distribution fees charged by utility companies to move that power across the grid. And here comes a principle that Alberta is pitching to those tech giants. They call it bring your own power, BYOP. They are offering these tech giants to build their own natural gas plant directly next to their data centers. They call it behind the fence. So tech companies would be able to completely bypass the public grid. Also, think about change rate. These tech giant companies are American companies, meaning their American money would be worth a lot of money in Canada. So it's also been announced, and Alberta announced that they will fast track AI data centers. So they will fast track AI data center projects that includes bring your own power. So we're talking about allowing tech companies to buy the surplus of natural gas to build their own natural gas power plants. And Alberta is proposing to fast track the AI data center projects that include bring your own power. Remember, and another thing that is very, very appealing to those tech giants here in Canada is, remember when I said that cooling there was a massive difference in cooling between traditional data centers and the new AI data centers. Although the methods are different, when you consume energy, heat is created and the heat needs to be addressed. No matter the methodology you use to cool your servers, there's still a lot of energy that is consumed, thus heat is produced. Like I said earlier, in normal data centers, it's the air that's being cooled by massive ACs. And in Canada, the advantage that we have is that the air outside is normally cold. Like a company that we bought at my old company was called 4 Degrees. It was based out of Quebec City, and their data centers were called 4 Degrees because on average, the air temperature in Quebec City, if you look at the whole year, was 4 degrees. So in a AI data center, it's not the air that needs to be cooled, it's the liquid in which the servers are either emerged in or submerged in, or the liquid that is passed around the servers to cool them down. So instead of cooling the air inside the building, what they do is that they send that water outside to massive refrigerators to cool the air down. So they need to spend a boatload of money to cool the water down. It's estimated that if you compare Alberta to a place like, let's say, Texas or Virginia, where the outside air is warm, by coming to Alberta, they're looking at cooling energy consumption by reducing their cooling energy consumption by 30 to 50%. In place like Texas, it literally costs 30 to 40% of their entire building power bill. Just by moving their or building here in Alberta, if you consider how cheap our energy is, if you consider that the air is cold, which is going to be even cheaper to cool down their data centers, you can imagine that a facility or a campus, they call them campus because they're normally not just one single data centers, they're campuses of data centers. But if a company is looking at a multi-facility hub that draws 500 to 1,000 megawatts, they could be saving hundreds of millions of dollars every year by building their data centers here in Canada, more specifically in Alberta. And I'd be curious to see, I should research this for the next episode, but I'd be curious to see if that's the same case for Quebec, because we do have a lot of hydroelectricity, which means the energy is cheap. I just don't know that our grid can handle it. And that's why, if you look at Alberta, that's probably why they're looking at Alberta, because they're proposing to those tech giants to build their own natural gas plants, which that is insane, absolutely insane that they're not allowing them to do that, but that it consumes so much power that they need their own power plants. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy to me. And this is exactly why Kevin O'Leary, we all know who Kevin O'Leary is spearheading a massive project to build what is being billed as the world's largest AI data center. And that industrial park is called the Wonder Valley, and it's supposed to be built in northern Alberta. The campus is planned for an 8,000-acre site in the municipal district of Greenview near Grand Prairie. They estimate that the project, the lifetime project of this data center campus would cost more than $70 billion and would require up to 9 gigawatts of power. And this is the last thing I'm going to share today. We're going to start taking some questions and comments soon because I saw quite a few ones that I'm really interested in addressing. And this is what I want to talk about on the next episode. I want to talk about the hypocrisy behind data centers because it seems that you and I need to pay for carbon taxes so that we don't pollute, yet they're allowing these massive data centers to be built in Canada. And it seems that it's been reported by the deepdive.ca that Kevin O'Leary's Wonder Valley data center is going to be exempt from Alberta's environmental review. Alberta's government has exempted Kevin O'Leary's Wonder Valley data center near Grand Prairie from a provincial environmental impact assessment, a decision that clears a major regulatory hurdle for the project billed as the world's largest AI data centers industrial park. The exemption, outlined in a letter from the province environment ministry dated this week, and that was April 4th, raises questions about oversight for a facility poised to consume 7.5 gigawatts of power and 24 million cubic meter of water annually. And this is a very, very important point that we will be addressing in the next episode, is how much water those data centers actually require. Because as I said, they're cooled by a liquid based on water. So they need this. We're talking about 24 million cubic meters of water annually. And in the US, I don't know if you're following what's going on in the US, but a lot of the states don't have water anymore. They have massive drought, and supposedly that in that area where the data center is being built, or is at least they're trying to build it there, they already have droughts. So I'm very, very curious to do more research as to what are environmentalists talking about this, and kind of bothers me that I'm going to be talking about environmentalists and I'm probably going to agree with them. I don't normally agree with environmentalists out there. Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious, but I'm starting to think that they might have a point on this one, but more on this on the next episode. I thought originally that I'd be able to squeeze all of this in one episode, but we're already 33 minutes in, and I'm not here to cram your head with as much information as I can provide you. So I'm really, really doing my best to speak about very technical stories, technical concepts, without turning this into a university course. So hopefully it made sense to you guys. Hopefully you understood what I'm talking about. If not, drop me a message, drop a comment, because I really want to see what you guys are thinking. What's your opinion on this? What are you guys thinking about data centers coming to Canada? Because like I said, it is a very smart decision for them. I'm not saying for us, for them. And let me remind you, this was not an episode about data centers for the sake of talking about data centers. The reason I'm addressing data centers today is because it directly connects to services like Palantir, to the Internet of Things, to 5G that I spoke about on Monday. Same thing that the softwares we were talking about yesterday, the surveillance, algorithmic surveillance softwares that police forces are using in Canada, the predictive softwares, the social media softwares, anything that is based on AI that requires AI to be running requires a lot of energy. And that is why I'm talking about data center. But the real reason I'm talking about data center is that in my mind, we are building the infrastructure that will enslave us. Because remember, the whole point of this 5-part series that's going to turn into a 9-part series is to speak about Bill C8, Bill C9, Bill C22, the new Bill C63 that will be tabled soon, and social media bans. The whole point is to explain that in order for our government to implement their surveillance and censorship agenda, AI is not only required, it is the centerpiece of their agenda. And in order to have AI, you need massive data centers that will be pulling a boatload of energy and that will pollute our environment. But it seems that they're getting a pass because of what exactly? Why do you think they're getting a pass? Why do we need to pay for carbon tax on the gas that we buy, on everything now? Because obviously it's translated in food costs as well. Everything is affected by gas prices. Yet projects like Wonder Valley gets a pass on the environmental assessment from Alberta. Why do you think that is? They're building the infrastructure they need to implement the bills C8, C9, C22, the new C63, and the social media ban that they've been talking about. So, you guys, let me know what you think about this. Let me know your opinion. Let me know your comments about those massive data centers. Let me remind you that I will be opening up the orphans hotline as we speak. I am just literally looking for the link in my notes so that I can copy paste it in the comment section. And Bacon Slayer was trying to call yesterday, but he was calling when my camera's overheated. But here is the link. I just dumped it in the comment section. The link is callme.road.com, and the code to enter is SFLXJY. So let's get to your comments and see what you guys are saying. Let's start right at the beginning. The first comment. In my list, Canada already has a few hundred data center built here already and running for years. This is nothing new. Well, you posted that about almost 25 minutes ago. Hopefully you understand by now that there is a massive difference. And the massive difference being, as I just said, that the reason they're building those AI data centers is because they need AI to run their surveillance and censorship agenda that is being passed or tried to be passed through Bill C8, C9, C12, C22, and C63, the new C63. Same for their social media bans. So, yes, they've been building data centers ever since the internet was created, but we're not talking about the same type of technology here. And hopefully today that made it very clear. Blackbone is also saying the only difference is the newest ones they want to build is much, much larger. Not necessarily. That's a misconception. The data centers for AI do not necessarily need to be bigger. Because as I said earlier, the density of servers, the way that the AI computing processes are done is different than regular servers. Thus, they can pack more per rack, but it does consume 5 times to 200 times the amount of power per rack. Canada, Quirker. Oh man, that is quite the name. Quirk is saying Canada's moving more into electrification, and the grid will require upgrading anyway. Not necessarily, because like I said, in Alberta, they're offering the buy your own or bring your own power, meaning they have so much natural gas, and because of federal policies, liberal policies, they don't have the pipelines to bring them to markets. So basically, their natural gas is trapped within Alberta. They are offering those companies, those tech giants, to buy their surplus energy cheap, which would be 40 to 50% less than in the US. But they're also proposing to them that they build their own natural gas power plants because the grid cannot handle the amount of electricity that they require. And the other problem is that it would take a long time to build the extensions to reach those data centers, because you can imagine that those data centers are not gonna be built in urban areas. And like I said earlier, one of the big costs of data centers when it comes to their power is the transport. Is not necessarily the electricity itself, is getting it there to the data centers. Because once again, you don't build an 8,000 square, what was it? An 8,000 square acre 8,000 acre square campus right in the city. So it is extremely expensive to bring the power there. But if they can build their own power plants, yes, it's going to cost a lot more upfront, but the monthly cost is going to be a lot cheaper. And believe me, if you understand how business work, spending money upfront is always a good idea. And those people, those companies, the Meta, the Meta, the Apple, the Microsoft, the Googles of this world have plenty of upfront money to pay for their own power. Let me say, Chuck Davis is saying, I will not play the money for it. I will not play, maybe not pay the money for it. Trevor's saying, too bad it will be a bunch of non-Albertan people voting. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, because they will attract, and that is one thing that I haven't had time to confirm it, but I can imagine that they're going to be selling the idea in Alberta that this is going to be good for the economy because it's going to bring a lot of high-paying jobs. And they're not wrong. It will be good for the economy of Alberta. But is it going to be good for the sovereignty of Alberta? Is it going to be good for the freedom of Alberta if you understand that those massive AI campuses or massive data centers are needed in order to run the softwares and platforms and applications that Bill C8, C9, C22 are asking for? We are literally looking at a time where they're asking us to build the infrastructure that will enslave us. This is the reality of AI data centers being built in Canada. Carmela is saying it's okay. Brookfield will build a small nuclear reactor for all the data centers. No worries. Funny enough, is that they do specialize in nuclear reactor. You're absolutely right. And they've sold a bunch of them to the US. They sold a bunch of them to Ukraine. It's probably just a coincidence that they've sent somewhere above $25 billion of our taxpayers' money to Ukraine ever since the war began. And Brookfield just sold them a bunch of nuclear reactors. So you're probably bang on. If they can't afford, if natural gas is not an option, maybe nuclear is. Trevor Benson is saying they have this thing now. They install small racks on the side of your house. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it because AI is so demanding on processing power that it requires all the racks that they can possibly get. But it's interesting because a lot of companies are already announcing that they've overspent their AI budget of 2026 by April. A lot of company came out. I was just reading an article, I think it was yesterday, talking about how a lot of companies out there have already spent their entire 2026 budget, and we're barely at the end of May, but the article was stating April. Ivermectin is saying Alberta's not doing these things. Our political pigs are. We don't want them. You know, I don't know about that. Yes, I agree that it is in the benefits of those politicians, no doubt about that. That's nobody's going to question that. I think you're absolutely right on that. But to say that Alberta's not doing those things, I guarantee you that if you speak to the average Albertan about AI data centers or just building data centers, because remember what I said, the entire project, the lifetime of the project of Wonder Valley is estimated to be above $70 billion. That is a lot of money that's going to be injected into the economy of Alberta, the economy of Canada, and it's going to be sold that way. I guarantee you that our governments are going to be talking about how this is great for the economy, because it is great for the economy if you don't consider why they're building it as they're passing the bills C8, C9, C22. If you don't understand those bills, you don't understand why they're building those AI data centers here in Canada, it sounds like a great idea. Just like social media bans. What was it? 75% of parents with kids living in their house still were asked if they believed in social media bans, and 75% of those parents said yes. They don't understand what it means. They don't understand that social media bans, in order to be implemented, means that everybody will need to identify who they are. Everybody will need to provide a government or multiple government approved IDs to make sure to prove that they are not part of the age group they're trying to create. And this is the same thing we're seeing with AI data centers. People are focusing on the wrong thing. They're not focusing on what it means in the long run. So to say that Albertans are not for that, I would disagree with you, because I guarantee you that if you ask the average Albertans, they are for this, because they don't understand what it actually means. Quark is saying, though power is an issue for data centers, water is a concern. They bring job and investment. Seems like a mixed bag. But again, that's what I'm trying to explain, because if you're not looking at what's going on behind the scene, what it actually means, it's a lot of money that could be injected in the economy of Alberta. And I guarantee you that is what will be sold. Again, Sally B1P is saying no one wants this shit. I invite you guys to have that conversation with your family, your friends, your loved ones. What do they think about data centers being built in Canada that will inject $90 billion in the economy? And I guarantee you that the vast majority of people you're going to be asking, you're going to be talking, are going to tell you that it's a great idea, because it will create a lot of high-paying jobs. So to say that no one wants that shit, unfortunately, would be incorrect. No one that knows what that shit means wants that shit. That I agree with. Olds Alberta, which is where it's being built, right? Because that's what I was reading. But Olds Alberta is fighting like crazy to stop Kevin O'Leary from putting a data center in their town. This is something I want to talk about in the next episode too. I want to talk about the hypocrisy, but I also want to talk about the protests that are going on, because those protests are starting to pop all over the US too. I saw protests in BC, I believe it was last week, where people were criticizing AI data centers. So, yes, there's going to be a massive fight against those data centers. I don't believe that they're fighting because of what I'm talking about today and how it connects to Bill C8, C9, C6, C22, and other bills, but they're fighting the environment on this, because this is the hypocrisy that we need to talk about. It's somehow okay for us to be charged for carbon, but it's okay for Kevin O'Leary's Wonder Valley to bypass the environmental assessment in Alberta. That's the hypocrisy right there. Yeah, Carmilla saying Kevin O'Leary wants to build the world's biggest data center in Grand Prairie. Yeah, that's basically what we've been talking about. And we'll talk about more on the next episode too. But yeah, absolutely correct. Trevor saying our grid can't even handle these Tesla and newcomers. Yeah, and that's exactly why they brought the idea. They're selling the idea, or the sales pitch to those tech giants is that they can build their own power plants, natural gas power plants. Data centers employ electricians for 1 year if lucky. After that, everything will be automated. And that is the interesting part. You're absolutely right. I don't know that it would just be a year, because that project is going to obviously be over years and years and years. You don't build a 8,000 acre square campus in a year. But eventually, yes, eventually all those jobs are going to be automated, and they're not going to be humans working in those data centers. Even 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago, when I was still a sales engineer and I was still doing customer calls. Yeah, it would be more like 5 years. Yeah, oh shit, even 6 years now. But even 6 years ago, I've been to warehouses where the humans were being replaced by robots. You actually had you had lines. When we call it a lines, is just a line of production. And not only were the line of production themselves, so the conveyor belts, were run by AI, but you would have AI robots. They were not like legs and arms. They looked like, the platform. I don't know what the name is. When you have a pallet of products, you have the doll. It's kind of like a dolly that fits under the pallet, picks it up, and you can move it around, but it's manually ran by a human. That's what they were. They were literally picking up the pallets of product, and they were bringing them to the conveyor belts. And it was kind of cool to look at, because it was the first time I was seeing it in real life, but it was projecting a color light around it. It was like a security barrier, because you still had humans working in the warehouse, and they were not worried about the robots at all. They were just doing their thing. And if a human was to go inside that arc of color that it was projecting on the ground, it's like just a light, it would stop to let the human go. But all to say, humans were already being replaced by robots 6 years ago. So you know that those data centers that are ran by the biggest tech companies in the world that are all about automation and AI will replace those. You're not going to have a lot of humans working in those data centers, that's for sure. Carmela is saying Meta's AI is learning from the smart people that AI will soon replace. How fucking smart are those people, really? It's learning from all of us. That's the whole point, right? AI needs to be trained. And this is why that's one of the reasons why they demand so much energy compared to traditional data centers, is because when they're learning, when AI is learning, they will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it never stops. The energy is always required. Oh, let's see if this works. Bacon Slayer's calling. Let's see. Mr. Bacon Slayer, what's going on?
Hello, yes.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, I'm doing good. I wanted to add to the conversation. I think you forgot to mention that with these AI power plants, AI data centers that I was reading in California in the Silicon Valley that a lot of people were complaining that their power bills were going up because it's consuming more electricity.
When you think about it, it would make sense because there's just so much power that's available. And if the demand is higher, that means that the bill, they can charge more. So it would make sense that they're paying more.
Yeah, and especially when the winters we have here, the electricity, fucking Hydro Quebec and all that. They advise a lot of people to lower your power usage.
Yeah, and they say the same thing in the summer, right? When your air
Yeah, the air
conditioning's running.
conditioning.
Yeah, same thing. So, by the way, I'm just muting you when I'm talking because we can hear me in the background. So it's
Alright.
just reverbing. But Alberta is different again because the big sale that they're proposing to those tech giants is to literally build their own power plant. So they're not going to be dependent on the power grid whatsoever. So it bypasses that problem that the grid cannot handle their power. It doesn't fix our problem that our power grid cannot supply enough energy, but it does fix the problem for those tech giants.
Yeah, I'm imagining like besides Alberta, all the other provinces like like Quebec, Ontario, all these other provinces, people are gonna realize sooner or later like I'm gonna pay more in my electricity bill. Like
I don't know. I don't know if they will.
because in California, you can look it up. In California, they have I think they have the biggest AI data centers in the world in Silicon Valley, like at least 300 of them. And I was reading a lot of residents were starting to complain about it. That's why I'm repeating.
No, but
I don't know. Maybe
you're right that they do have a lot of AI data centers in California, but the big difference with California is they don't really produce their energy. They don't even produce their own water. Like a lot of California doesn't have water. They export, they bring water from other states to California. Like I spent a lot of time in Arizona a couple of years ago, and it was the same thing. You literally, I think it was called the Rio Grande. I might be mistaken on the name, but right now the Rio Grande, which is a place I visited, is empty. It is dry. There's no water being fed in the Rio Grande. So not only are they not producing their own power, but they're having issues with water. But we don't have that problem in Canada. We have a massive amount of water, and if they're gonna build their own power plants, they're gonna be able to produce their own power cheap. But yes, as you said, it will impact us regular consumers. It always does.
Yeah, pretty much. You pretty much broke it all down right there, man.
It's hard for me to remember everything. I need to. There's so much information out there. Sometimes I forget, but I really appreciate you calling in. It was great talking to you. I didn't realize that Bacon Slayer was a Frenchie too, because your accent is betraying you. But I really appreciate your call and I appreciate your comments, man.
Y a pas de trouble, man.
Bonne fin de journée, mon gars.
Yes, ciao.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. Bacon Slayer on the line. It was good talking to him. Hopefully, guys, that motivates you to call in as well. You purchased this beautiful piece of equipment that I'm looking at right now, the Rodecaster Pro 2, just so that we could take calls. So I'm happy that Bacon Slayer called. Hopefully more of you calls, because I want to have those voice-to-voice conversations with you guys. It beats the comments. It's more personal. The whole point is I don't have all the solutions. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the information. But these conversations are very useful into educating the people out there. So thanks, Bacon Slayer, for calling. Hopefully, this encourages you to call on the next show, which is tomorrow. And by the way, I got a couple of announcements to make because I kind of messed up on this one. Tomorrow we were supposed, not only am I breaking this data center episode into two because there was no way I could do it justice while making just one episode, but I had completely forgot that tomorrow was supposed to be the fifth part of this 5-part series, but tomorrow is East meets West with Jason Levine, so he's going to be joining the show for the second time. We're doing it every 2 weeks. I think it's a good idea. I think it kind of breaks the week because it's been very intensive on information, and it's going to be a good thing that we speak about what's going on in the world of politics and the world of Canada, because I haven't spoken about this in 5 days now, so we really need to update what's going on. And I also need to say that I want to remind you guys that I will be at the Better Way conference in Rhode Island over the weekend. I was invited by Dr. Mark Trozzi to attend as independent media, which is great. I'm going to show up there with a boatload of equipment, my lights, my cameras, all the new gear that I bought over the last month to record interviews with some of the biggest names. Hopefully record interviews, because I'm showing there with microphones and cameras, and I'm hoping that people are going to talk to me. But we're going to be, I want to speak to some of the biggest names in alternative medicine, because that's what that conference is all about. You have a boatload of doctors that are on at that conference, and a lot of those doctors were against COVID vaccines. They were against COVID mandates, and that's why they lost their jobs, and that's why they're so known today. But they're going to be at that conference, so hopefully I'm going to be able to get a lot of interviews. But I'm also hoping that I can live stream some of it, because the piece of equipment I just got last week allows me to plug 6 cameras in there, like 8 microphones, and I can wirelessly live stream from that device. It's a matter of knowing if the event will allow me to do so or not, because I do believe that they're selling tickets to their live stream, but I want to live stream the interviews that I'm going to be doing, not the show itself. So that means that Sunday, Monday, there's no show. I will be over there, and Monday I'm coming back. I think my flight lands at like 7:30, so no way that I can make a show on Monday. So tomorrow, East meets West with Jason Levine. No show on Sunday, no show on Monday. Tuesday, we're going to be talking second portion of the data center conversation we started today. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about smart cities, because that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. That should have been part of this series, this 5-part series that is turning into an 9-part series. But Tuesday, part 2 of data centers. Wednesday, I want to talk smart cities, to connect IoT, to connect 5G, to connect AI to what municipalities throughout Canada are doing right now, turning their municipality, their city into smart cities, and how this is the transition step to 15-minute cities. And then on Thursday, I'm debating if we are doing an episode on 6G, or we're taking a break from the AI focused series and we talk about something that I've wanted to talk about, or actually that was proposed by you guys, the Georgian, why am I always forgetting the damn name? How do they call them? Ugh, wow, it is getting, I am not getting a lot of sleep. My apologies. Not the Georgian slate. It was my original conspiracy theory. That's the one, my first conspiracy theory, I believe, ever. And it is the tablets that were predicting the 90% of world population reduction. Thank you, the Georgian stones. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. Wow, I'm having problems remembering this. So, guys, the Georgia Guidestones. Thank you. Yes, the Georgian Guidestones. That's right. And I think it was Trevor that mentioned it, that wanted to talk about this. So yes, I'm thinking that Thursday next week we're going to be talking about this. On that note, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. Make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to comment if you're not watching this live. Make sure to subscribe. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to join us again tomorrow, 7 p.m. We are joined by Jason Levine for East Meets West. We're talking Alberta and Canadian politics. Until then, I will wish you a very good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.